Hello everyone, this is Jacob Popio, the producer of the Apex. In this episode, Jan and RJ sit down with Robinson Otim. Robinson has recently graduated from Walsh University with his MBA, but his real story lies in what brought him to Walsh in the first place. From dealing with African rebel groups and being forced to hide from his own parents for safety, to bombs exploding outside of his boarding school, Robinson has dealt with many obstacles along his path. Be sure to listen through the end of the podcast to hear how he plans to give back. If you want to support us, there are two ways to do so. One is to donate to our cause at www.patreon.com/theapexpodcast. The other is completely free. All we ask is if you learn something from our episode or know someone that needs to hear our message, share it with them. Please subscribe and hope this pushes you toward your apex.
Welcome, Apex Chasers, to another episode of the Apex Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jan Almasy, and seated across the table from me is my co-host and partner in crime, Mr. R.J. Holiday.
the tail off there. That was a great intro.
Hey.
You ever thought about doing boxing matches?
Me?
Introducing people? Bruce Buffer over here.
Fighting out of the red corner.
Exactly.
I could. A little bit of training, I'm sure I could get it down.
Well, hello, everybody. Glad to be back. No, we're here with an interview today. Very excited.
What?
Oh, yeah.
We still do interviews?
I guess.
What
Sometimes.
are those?
Sometimes
What are
between all of our
those?
rants and all that.
Oh, man. Yeah, so it's been a while since we've had an interview, but I'm super excited for this one. This interview's been in the works for a long time, and we're getting it done the day before I leave for Europe and like a week before our guest leaves to go back home to Uganda.
Squeezing it in under the wire. Better late than never, right?
Yeah, better Nate than Lever.
We're recording not in our usual place today either.
Yeah, we are back at the Walsh University in the original studio that the podcast was founded.
I'm having flashbacks.
However, we brought our own equipment this go around.
Yeah.
So we're going places.
We're here for the quality.
We've got the mobile studio, but we're inside of the Walsh University studio. So shout out to Walsh University. Thank you for always being so accommodating. So to introduce our guest a little bit, he grew up in an environment of war in Uganda. We're going to touch a little bit on that and what it looks like as far as the country kind of rebuilding and people being stuck in a place post that war that he really wants to try to change. That's kind of been, I've had coaching meetings and stuff with this gentleman for probably close to a year now at this point, where when we first met, he had a lot of really cool ideas and the confidence just was not there to pursue a whole lot of them. And the amount of progress that I've seen in just a year as far as him putting the rubber to the road and actually going out and working hard and pursuing them and developing them has been phenomenal. So, and being part of this journey is going to be seeing where he grew up and how he got here. And then the other part is going to be offering practical life advice to those entrepreneurs that have the ideas, but aren't sure where quite to get started. I'm sure Robinson will have a lot to say about that. So with that, everybody.
I basically had a whole interview with him before we even turned the mics on.
Yeah, I know. That's why I wanted to just turn the mics on so that we could
hurry
capture
up.
it. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Robinson Otim.
Hi everyone, hi listeners. My name is Robinson Otim.
You excited to be here?
Really excited. Wow, this is an experience. Really, it's cool, and you guys are awesome.
No, thank you very much. Like I said, I've had a great conversation. This is going to be, I'm very excited about this interview.
So, Robinson, why don't you just go through, for the purposes of our guests, just do a general introduction of who you are, where you're from, and, what you do or why you're here.
Oh, thanks, Jan. Like I said, my name is Robinson Otim. Well, where I come from, we don't start with our first names. We say Otim Robinson. That's really interesting, yeah. Well, I'm born and raised in Uganda. I was born in the northern part of Uganda. Oh, and for those who don't know, Uganda is a small country in East Africa. It's really tiny. About 40 times the size of, the US is about 40 times the size of Uganda. So you can fit 40 Uganda in
Right
the US. Here. Yeah. It's a nice country, really beautiful, located right across the equator. We have summer every day for the full year.
I don't think I'd survive that.
Oh, it's really cool. Well, really green rivers and lakes. Beautiful country. But also a country that has gone through really tough times, really a tough past. So this country gets independence in 1962. We have peace for around 8 years.
Where did they get their independence
Oh,
from?
they got the independence from Britain. Uganda
Okay.
was a British colony.
Yep.
And in
Us too.
1962, gets independence. We
Did
get
you say
our
us too? Yeah. 1776, baby.
So we get a first African president, really cool. That went on for 8 years. It was really nice. Immediately afterwards, boom, we start getting war. People start fighting. So our country has had 8 presidents. And of the 8 presidents, none of them has come to power by ballot. Everyone has come to power by the gun. So there's always been war for every change of president. Oh, but for the last time, we've had this guy who's been there for 33 years. So 33 years, one president. I've never seen any other president but the one I see.
Gotcha.
Interesting. But the region I was born in, northern Uganda, went through war for 25 years. Now, that's the war that I was born in. I lived it, saw it. I saw it come to an end. My childhood, my school days were not as smooth. They're not your usual childhood that you have. Home for us at that time is not what we call home here, because home meant a place you report to at 10 a.m. every morning and leave at 4 p.m. because you have to go to hide. That is what it felt like. Home for us was not a place where your dad and mom were people you would spend time with and be happy with. You don't trust anyone, not even your parents. So when you leave to go to hide at 4 p.m., you don't tell anyone, not even your father, not your mother, because you don't trust anyone. That was home for us. We went to boarding school. Boarding school was the closest to the safest place. Why was boarding school safe? Because the government set the military to protect students. But well, it was just, I'd say, it's something that was meant to make you think you're safe, but it wasn't really safe. I still remember in my 4th year of high school, and we were in our dormitory sleeping, and we hear a bomb, not a gunshot, a bomb. And we had this rebel group. They recruited young men to their rebel group. It wasn't by mutual consent. They would just come and take you by force. So they wanted young boys like me and everyone my age. And well, so my childhood was spent running and hiding. Well, that is my childhood. I hope I haven't crossed beyond what you asked. You just asked me to introduce myself.
That's phenomenal. I mean,
what was boarding school from? Like for here, we have K through 12, kindergarten through. So when did you start boarding school?
So I started boarding school when I joined high school.
Okay.
So our education system is a bit different from what we have here.
Mm-hmm.
Our education system, we have what we call nursery school or kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically 3 years. Many people at my time never got the chance to go to nursery school. It was considered a luxury.
Mm-hmm.
So many people don't. I was lucky to go through it.
Gotcha.
Then we go through 7 years of elementary school. We call it primary school. So it's 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the 7th year, you do a national exam. So basically, every student countrywide does the same exam to qualify to go to high school.
And then if you don't qualify,
if you don't qualify, you don't go to high school.
Oh.
Then after that, you go to high school. Now, high school for us is 6 years, broken down into 2. So you study the first 4 years, and we call that ordinary level. You pass and you get a certificate for it.
Mm.
Back in the day, that certificate was already big. It was something, it had so much weight.
Yeah.
But right now, it's nothing.
Mm.
After the 4 years, you need to go back for 2 more years of high school. It's basically called advanced level. So it's 6 years of high school.
Do you choose to do that, or are you invited back for the two?
Oh, all right. You do, at the end of the 4th year, you do another national exam.
And that's how you get into the.
You get into high school.
Mm.
You kind of specialize. Your subjects reduce. So the first years of high school, you do 13 subjects. That's way too many.
Yeah, very
But-
broad.
Very broad, yeah. But then at the end of the last 2 years, you're able to choose some subjects that you're able to basically you choose whether you're going to do arts or you're going to do sciences.
Mm.
And that's what you do in your 2 years of advanced level.
So,
Gotcha.
so once you made it into the advanced level and everything, I mean, I'm going to kind of rewind just a little bit to kind of dive more into that, just running and hiding and what that mentality was going through school and everything. Because, I mean, one of the big things that when you research the war in Uganda, and like Gulu was kind of like the hub of a lot of that conflict and stuff. So I know, I mean, we're going to get to parts of your story later on where Gulu is very heavily involved, but with the camps and rebel groups constantly going back and forth and stuff like that, what was it like being in boarding school and having to balance that gut instinct of survival versus trying to see the light of the potential of an education? Because I feel like when you're in that type of situation, it's very easy for people to fall back into, I just need to survive.
Hard to
All
keep your
the-
eye on the light at the end of the tunnel.
The education comes secondary. But obviously, I mean, you're sitting here recording with us, so education had a special place in your heart. But what was it like to try to balance those urges at that time?
Well, now that I sit here today and look back, I can't even imagine how I went through that. But at that time, it was hard to even differentiate. It kind of became a norm. Just imagine, we were born in that.
Mm.
We didn't know any other life apart from that.
That is your reality.
That was reality for us. Well, what it meant going to school was the Catholic Church in our country played a great role. So the boarding schools belonged to the church.
Mm.
And for some reason, the rebels had some respect for church-founded institutions.
So they'd leave them alone?
Not really alone, but they wouldn't attack them as violently or as frequently as they would do with your ordinary public schools.
Mm.
So that was one plus for us.
Gotcha.
Secondly, I come from a bit of a weird family. Weird in the sense, it's now that I look at it, I kind of look at it as abnormal. But coming from that family was my first motivation to stay in school and be able to endure whatever the cost.
Mhm.
I come from a polygamous family, typical African family. In Africa, where I come from, it's okay for a man to have 3-4 wives. My father had 3 wives. My father has 21 children. I have 20 siblings.
It's a big Christmas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Well, 14th born, so somewhere mid between. I was the first to go to college, the first and only one. Now I just got my MBA from Walsh University. But I also saw the struggles growing up in such a family. I saw what it meant by not having enough. I saw what it meant by the conflicts that arise from coming from such a family. I always looked up to be better than where I was from.
Mm.
And at that point, the only thing that would get me out of that was getting an education, working hard at school. At that point, everybody else, young people my age, would look at me as it was strange for them. That was not the path anyone would choose to go. After all, you could be dead the next minute. You could be abducted the next minute.
Yeah.
Why would you need to work hard?
See, and I think that's it. Just to kind of add in a little bit for that story to kind of continue developing. I think there's 2 very, very distinct options that people can take when they're in that type of situation, and we've talked about it on the Apex before. I mean, not to the extent of being in a rebel-torn country and the opportunity to die being very real, minute to minute, but anytime anybody experiences an abyss they have the option of either looking at the abyss and saying, what's the point in putting in the effort?
Mm.
Or they can look at the abyss and say, I have no choice but to put in more effort.
To get
Because
myself
I
out of
could
this.
potentially die in the next 24 hours, so I need to give it all I have.
Exactly.
Or I could potentially die in the next 24 hours, so I might as well not do anything. And you just happen to choose and be blessed with the correct side of that.
It's hard to go against the grain, especially
it is,
when you
it is
see,
really hard.
like you said, everybody else around you
They
actively
couldn't
not
see the
choosing to
vision.
take the same path that
Yeah.
you were. And then I imagine, like you just got done saying, that you took a little ridicule for, dedicating yourself to your schooling.
Oh yeah, and what even makes it worse is growing up in a place where you don't have any positive peer influence.
Yeah.
You don't have someone that you can look up to. I only came across that really late in my life, to meet people that I could look up to and say, wow, I want to be like person A or B. They've done so well in their education. I didn't have that.
You were your own motivator.
Yeah.
And now that you have those positive influences and stuff, if there was one thing that you could go back and tell yourself at that point in time, knowing what you know now, what would it be?
Well, then I developed one philosophy. I read it from somewhere, but I decided to take it up. It was, do not always go where the path may lead. Sometimes you just need to go where there is no path and you leave behind a trail. Maybe many times we are supposed to be that person to start up something.
You're supposed to make the
We are
trail.
supposed to make the trail. But many times everyone looks for a path that is already set.
Mm.
And I think that's where we go wrong. If each of us would always open up a new trail, just imagine how many trails would have for others to follow.
Right.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a really famous Robert Frost poem that talks about that.
Yeah.
Two roads diverge in a yellow wood. I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially, that's a concept that's been around for a long time, that sometimes being the trailblazer is the most rewarding piece in life, but is also one of the hardest things to do. So why don't we continue on here? So at this point, you're boarding school, trying to get the education, consistently being under attack and stuff like that. Were there ever any experiences that you have where you legitimately believed that you weren't going to make it out, and then you eventually ended up making it out?
Yes. All my life, someone has always been there to support me. I managed to make it out because somebody else believed in me. Somebody else made it possible for me to get to where I am today. So, at that time, I told you about the national exams that we all have to do. Well, at some point, they go and find out who did best. And they will give you some sort of scholarship or some sort of support. So after my first exam, ordinary level,
That's to get into high school?
I was already in high school then.
Oh, so to get into the last 2 years.
To get
Okay,
into the
advanced
last
level,
2
yeah.
All
years.
right, gotcha.
Advanced level. So, I performed better than anyone. So in Uganda, we have either administrative units called sub-counties. I think you have counties here. So, for us, our sub-counties would be equivalent of a county here.
Gotcha.
Well, I was the best, so they gave me a scholarship. And that scholarship was for my first term at school. And that's how I managed to leave the war-torn zone in northern Uganda, then traveled to study in the city in Uganda, in Kampala. So it was because of my performance that got me out of the war zone. They offered to pay my tuition in a school in the city that had no war. So that was the beginning of my escape.
No. What did that feel like, getting that scholarship and knowing that despite all the ridicule and everything, that all the work that you had put in kind of came to a fruition?
Well, at that point, my excitement was just going to the city. That was all I was excited about.
Yeah, you're like, get me out of here.
Yeah, get out of
I'm
here.
gone.
Yeah, I was going to the city. That was it. I mean, I didn't think about it then that in terms of leaving this war zone. Now, wait a minute. Growing up, we had times when we would travel to the city and have to travel back home in northern Uganda. And right now, it's a 4 to 5 hour drive by bus. Back then, it was a 12 to 14 hour drive. why you had to drive halfway, so half of the journey, and we had to wait for all the vehicles, all the buses, or every vehicle that was going through that route that day had to wait for a convoy. So you had to wait for military men
To escort you?
so to escort you. So there was a tanker and
Wow.
all these big gadgets that I don't know, the fighting equipment that I don't know. So we would go in a convoy.
And this is as a child.
As a
You're-
child, I watched that all through my life growing up. That is what it was like.
So they'd stop you and then basically rotate the convoy to the city and back to the stop and then just take as many people.
As possible. So we all,
Wow.
every vehicle came and parked and waited. So probably you wait 3 or 4 hours. Then there was one trip. So we all moved as a group. But still, the rebels would still shoot at the convoys. They would bomb vehicles. It was there. So going to and fro the city was never safe.
It's like, was it even worth it?
It wasn't even worth
Going
it.
back
Yeah.
and forth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Many people stayed over. Those who crossed over to the city just stayed back and never went back home. Yeah, just to not to get to that mess. Well, so this time I had the opportunity to go and live in the city for 2 years. Well, I was going to a boarding school. They were paying for my first tuition. So it meant so much. And I was going to, I call that rub shoulders with the kids of the rich. I was going
Make
to
some new friends.
yeah, made some new friends. Well, I moved up to the city, and that was kind of a defining time. For once in my life, I had 2 years of peaceful studies. For the first time in my life, I was able to concentrate, live without worrying that someone is going to come and abduct you in the night, live without a worry that there's a bomb that was going to fall on your roof, live without the worry that any time in the night you have to go and sleep out in the cold. That was the first time.
And how old were you when that was the first time?
So we usually go to high school when we're 16. So, if you're 16, so 17, that's when you go to for the last 2 years of high school.
Mhm.
So 17 and 18 years.
So 18 years old,
Yeah.
and that's the first time in your life
Yes.
that you didn't have all that exogenous stress, believing that you could
Exactly.
potentially be abducted or killed.
It was also at that point that I realized that there's another life apart from the life that we were living before. That it's possible to live peacefully, to sleep, go to bed at 10 and wake up at 6 without any interruption. It was the first time. Well, now that I talk about it, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Then I didn't quite see because I thought it was the way of life. But the nice thing is those 2 years were also the times when our government and the rebels were kind of getting into a peace talks. And these peace talks were brokered by the church. There's the Archbishop of Gulu, who will be coming to Walsh next week, by the way. He walked over to the rebels. He went deep to the forest in the Congo. And he spoke to this guy and he says, "You've been fighting for 24 years, and all you've done is bring bloodshed. You know what? You've got to stop." Well, everyone was scared. They thought he was going to die. But everyone was surprised when he came back alive. And the other guy said, "Well, I'm not going to fight again." And he started pulling out his people. Well, he asked for something compensation. He asked that they be given amnesty. He asked that the government changes. But it was surprising that 25 years of war was changed by the guy who didn't even use a gun.
And just walked in
He
there
just
and used
walked
his voice.
in. He just had his courage. It's his courage that took him there.
That's what legends are made of right there.
Oh, yeah. And he's a very peaceful man.
I can't imagine walking into. Is that the gentleman that my sister has a picture with, along with Bishop
yeah.
Sabino?
Yeah, he's coming
Yeah.
here next week.
Walking into the Congo.
Yeah,
and
he just
then-
walked in there. And
Man, that's
He's fed up.
Yeah,
yeah, he was
that's
fed.
that's a miracle if I've ever heard one.
Yeah.
For sure.
And he was the only guy that the rebel leader trusted. Well, he gave him his direct phone, and he would call. So once in a while, remember, the rebel groups were scattered everywhere.
Yeah. They were all
All
around.
around. So there were groups that were still attacking people, and he would call them and tell them, "Look here, there's this attack that just happened last night." And he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to pull them out." Well, But that was the story. So 25 years, everyone was trying to fight by the gun. And they realized the solution was not even to fight. The solution was to talk.
Now, when did those negotiations start, timeline-wise?
Well, so the negotiations were at different levels. The very first one was started by the government. So they organized, we would have all these government officials go hire a hotel in another country, and they'll sit in these posh hotels. But nothing was changing back at home. People were continuing to die. They were disagreeing. Well, so this was
That
different.
doesn't sound like government at all.
Yeah. This one was different because these agreements were being signed in the bush. So I don't know
Boots
how.
on the ground,
Yeah, on the
like
ground.
you said.
There's some photos that I've seen that are really strange. They're not signing agreements in a hotel. They're in a bush. and these guys, they look terrible. Probably they've not taken a shower in I don't know how long. And
Decade.
yeah. And these guys walk in here. And,
Signing a piece of paper on a rock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think they even signed papers. They just went and talk this out.
Yeah.
Yep. Just
And-
shook
and-
hands on it.
Yeah, that was really beautiful. Yeah.
Spit on their hand. Become brothers that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, I complete high school and I have to go to college. Now, there's this.
And this is like early 2000s?
Oh,
When
that's
is this?
2000 and 2000, not 2004, 2005.
Yeah. Okay.
So the war
Just to make
basically-
sure that the guests kind of
kinda
keep
like-
that timeline in their head. Yeah.
So 2009 is when the war finally completely comes to an end.
2009, you said?
2009, yeah.
Okay.
Then, at least I'm sure I walked into Gulu in 2009 and it was peaceful. Like you would drive from Kampala, the city, to Gulu without having to be stopped, without meeting roadblocks, without any incidences. And that's when many people in Gulu start to get to know what it means to have peace.
Mm.
That's when people start to realize to live a normal life. That's when some people didn't even remember where their homes were because they lived for so long in internally displaced people's camps. So there were camps, everyone was picked away from their homes and camps were built. So we have kids who had grown their entire lives living in a camp. Now our camps are not the camps you see here. I've seen the borders and what people call concentration camps. They're not anywhere close to that. So the camps in Uganda are basically 2 meters squared, and they give you a tent. It's just a tent, and you have a family. Now we are talking of an African family. An African family is not anywhere
Like
less than
14
5 or
to
6.
20.
You
Yeah.
have all those people.
Yeah.
So basically, they just have a place to lay in the night.
They stack on top of one another.
Yeah, that's possible. Some of them had to go through that. Now you're seeing a father and a mother and the kids all in one place. Fathers and mothers didn't know what it meant by work because you wake up in the morning, you're in a camp. You don't go to work, just wake up and sit. So you wait for there will be trucks from World Food Program come give up food for free. So everybody just goes and lines up and waits for you. You wait for your ration.
Yeah.
So kids saw their parents. Well, here we know our parents go to work. Okay, when you need something, you ask your parent.
Yeah.
For us, that's not what you did because parents were not really breadwinners. The breadwinner was the truck.
Yeah.
The truck that brings food.
Yeah, the parents were
So-
just the vessel.
Yeah, so you grew up not having any respect for your parents.
Yeah.
Kids grew up. The only people who had resources were the military guys, the army men,
Yeah.
because they worked. But they also used very many young girls. Young girls had nothing, and if you wanted food, if you wanted something, you had to sleep with one of those army men. So we had girls of 12 years, 13 years get pregnant.
Hmm.
Rape. Remember, we are talking of an environment that is completely, should I call it abnormal?
It's upside down.
It's upside down.
Yeah, it's like subhuman almost.
The rule of life for survival. Everyone was looking for survival. Whether it's the father or the mother or the kid at home, they all looked at survival. It was a twisted life.
Yeah.
It was
You
not
just-
your
you have to
normal
watch out
life.
for yourself and nobody
Watch
else.
out on this for yourself. Now, time came, you had to go back home. Just imagine how difficult it would be for a man who has not worked in 20 years and he's supposed to start winning food for the family.
Yeah. It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. Just imagine a kid who never got the chance to go to school.
He doesn't know any different.
He doesn't know.
Yeah.
But here, the war's ended and they tell you, go back home, live your life, start a good home.
Like, where's that?
That doesn't
Nobody
happen.
knows how.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Everything's just been so twisted and lived out for that long that is the reality.
and that's the reality on the ground right now. Many people were pushed back to go home, but they don't exactly understand what it means by living a normal life.
Yeah.
Young people had chances missed. I have friends of mine who never got the chance to get an education, not because they didn't want, but the opportunity wasn't there. I had many of my friends who were abducted by the rebels, some of them taken at 9 years old. Well, after the war, the rebels bring you back and you're 21 years old. What life do you know? They don't know.
They only know war.
They only know war. And you expect them, they come back traumatized.
You have an entire nation that's just ravaged by PTSD.
Exactly. And that is what is in Gulu. Almost 1 out of every 5 people you meet have PTSD. They're struggling with that. Well, this is the kind of environment that we're from. And, well, the war is ended. People are beginning to pick up their lives. People are beginning to appreciate education. People are beginning to work. But with that background, it's not something you expect people to do in one day. It's not something that you can just wake up one day and make right.
Yeah. No, it's probably take more time fixing than it was to draw out the war for 25 years.
Yeah.
You're very right.
And around that time, you started a family of your own, right?
Well, I go to college.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, I had wanted to study accounting and finance. That was my vision, my dream. We also have a system in our country where you don't choose. Well, they give you an option you propose 4 areas of concentration for programs you think you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But the final decision is not yours to make. Our government decides for you. Well, so I wanted accounting and finance, but they chose for me something else. Well, that's what we could afford. So I went to college and studied something that wasn't really me. I went to study, I did a Bachelor of Arts in Social Sciences. I wanted accounting and finance, but that's a system.
Pretty different.
Very different. Well, I finally fall in love with it. I complete the program. I start my first job working with a humanitarian organization, working with young people. But because I'm shaped by my background and where I come from, I have this passion for seeing young people, basically motivate them, let them know life is different. You can make it better. You don't have to be, you can become whatever you want to. So I worked there for a few years, and that's when I met my family. I moved to Gulu, and God has always been taking me back to Gulu, the hub of the war. That's where the war was.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I was supposed to go to Gulu, my parents told me, "Are you crazy? You want to go to Gulu?" Back then, if anyone said you're going to Gulu, it's like you're choosing death over life. Why?
Yeah.
Because even if you're not going to die today, I mean, everything is shattered. Remember, there's war. There's nothing. Everything is down.
It's ravaged.
Yeah.
I feel like that's how people look at some, like when you're like, you want to join the infantry? What?
Yeah.
You want to join the
you're
military? Right. What? Why would you do that on purpose?
Yeah.
Got a death wish, boy.
Yeah, you feel called, though. If you feel called back to that area, like you said, you just happen to end up there.
And believe me, for many times, I tried to get something else to take me out of Gulu. But it seems like there was always this voice pushing me back. Mm-hmm. You have a mission there. You have a mission there. And it kept taking me back to Gulu. Well, I got to Gulu and eventually fell in love with Gulu. Why? The war had covered the truth in Gulu. Because of the war, you wouldn't read and see what was deep inside the people there. You wouldn't even see the beauty. Recently, I was seeing a photograph that was taken in Gulu, and I compared to a photo that was taken way back. Well, this photograph was taken using a drone, and Gulu was green. During the war, people never thought Gulu would become green, just green and look green.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute. Well, does war take away grass? I mean, this too, I wouldn't take it, but even just the looks, just the environment.
It changes.
Well, our government and other support, they've done a lot right now, trying to put back roads, try to build bridges, try to put infrastructure.
Yeah.
And Gulu has really made so much progress, so much. It's a beautiful place right now. You would love to be there. Well, I fell in love with Gulu, and I felt there's a mission, and I get the opportunity to come to the US finally. I meet somebody again. Like I said, I've only been able to come here because somebody believed in me.
Yeah.
And I meet a very nice gentleman. He's called Father Gino. And he tells me, well, we are opening up a university in Gulu. And I still remember our discussion. I told him, wait a minute, you want to open a university in Gulu? I was like, yeah. I'm like, but why? Gulu of all places? Remember, Gulu, nothing good ever comes from Gulu. Why Gulu?
Want to change the perception of it.
He's like, yes, with what our people have gone through, it's only through education. And if we open a university, we shall be able to address not just the short-term effects, but also the long-term effects of this war. Anything we do right now should be able to help our people heal.
Yeah.
And the healing is not just for their bodies. It's not really healing bodies like healing a disease, but we need to heal their bodies, their minds, and their hearts. Where he asked me, I need you to be part of this impossible dream. Because I told him it's impossible. Those guys are poor. The church is poor. A college, that's not something that normal, you don't
It's
have
difficult to get to in the first place.
Yeah, you won't have that. Well, but I fell in love with it. And believe me, more and more each day, I believe in what they decided to do. And again, the person who came up with this idea was Archbishop Odama, the one who fought the war, and he's the one who says, we shall not nurse. We shall not, in the short term, we cannot think we're going to call people for a training and train them in, for example, cancel them in one day and think they will get better.
Yeah.
You will not just advise people or give them seeds for free or give them money and you think they're going to get better. No, you need to be able to look at them in the short term and the long term. We have a whole generation of young people that missed a normal upbringing.
Yeah.
And that generation is the one that we want to provide for, we want to change. And it's based on that I came to the US. They got me a scholarship at Walsh University, where I came and did my master's in business administration. And I have to go back and contribute in some way to making our place a better place.
Nice.
So speaking of trying to make your place a better place, why don't we kind of dive into some of the ideas that you've had as far as, when we first met back in April, we can kind of talk about how we even, the story of why you're here sitting at the table. Because now everybody has the background of, you growing up and what got you to the U.S. and everything. But now we'll try to bring them up to speed on why you're even sitting behind the microphone in the first place. So we'll just why don't you just explain, from your perspective and stuff, how we met. And then I will kind of lead you into talking about the business ideas that you've come up with and ways that you believe you can contribute to bringing that diocese of Gulu, that location in Uganda itself as a whole, back up to speed.
Well, thank you. So on the 28th of May, 2018, I was in our kitchen at Laminate Hall at Walsh University. There was a graduation ceremony going on the grounds, the Walsh grounds, but I was watching this thing on YouTube. I wasn't even watching, I was listening. I remember we set a phone and we were listening, and somebody was speaking, was giving a speech at graduation, and that was Yan Almasi. And he was talking about he talked about his story and how as a young man he was motivated by his grandfather. And I still remember how he told the young guys, it's like, it's not about you. It's not about what you have today. You can always be better than what you had today. He's like, I've worked for a long time and I've not even been able to get a pay out of it. Mm-hmm. But even just do it with love. Well, when I was listening to this guy, I felt
resonated
somebody
with you.
Speaking me. He was talking about me. Oh, he would speak exactly what I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I had not yet met him. Not met him, but I had this guy speak. Well, later I got to realize it was Jan. And we met at your graduation. And so what I found strange was, you're a nurse. Okay? He was graduated with his degree in nursing. He was doing many other things. I'm like, why? First of all, why would you even do this? How do you balance the two? And I just loved that was really interesting, that he's able to pick up whatever he has, all the abilities, and you can put them up together and do something
To make something out of
make
it.
something out of it. And that was my motivation. Well, we started talking and we started sharing our stories. I listened to his stories. He listened to my stories. And he told me, wow, there's a lot you can do. I'm like, really? I was like, I think so. Well, I had the urge. I know I want to do something, but what is it that I should do? I just didn't know how to have that.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, I was sent here on scholarship by university. So kind of my whole attention was study hard, pass your exams. Well, when you have a chance, talk about this university, and well, that is it. Get back and get to work.
Yeah, and then go back. Yeah.
But I did not realize the impacts of the simple things we can do to change just one life or two lives or three lives. The universe may be able to change everyone at once, but you can do things as an individual or two people. So that's when we came up with, he helped me to think through this. And believe me, he was always probing me and getting me to think. He was getting me to think and asking me. And many times I would sit back and be like, there's so many things I think I can do. I am lucky. I'm more lucky than any other young person or many young people back in Uganda who went through what I went through but never got a chance to make it out of it.
Yeah.
I was lucky to somehow get out of it. And here I am. And I'm like, with ideas and sometimes with little simple acts of kindness, with simple steps, simple things we can do something that can change a life or two, especially of the very young people. Many ideas came up, and maybe as we continue, I'll kind of delve into them. First thing was, well, now more than ever, I need to go back and work for this university and work really hard. The question was, I didn't know what I was going to do there. I was like, well, a university is big. It's a big entity. I can't change everything in a university. But like, what can I do as an individual, as a person? So I got a chance to travel back home in December of 2018. And when I went back, picking from a few ideas from the Apex, just listening to people's stories. Well, I had been there and I thought I had had the worst experience during the war. But when I went back, I gathered young girls, young boys. I still remember a young lady called Konsi. And I would listen to Konsi's story. Konsi, she's just 19 years. She has 3 kids, 3 young kids at 19. Well, Konsi, it's not because she wants to have 3 kids. Konsi never got an opportunity in life. Getting married was her way out.
To a better life.
Yes, my way out was education. That was her way out. But well, that wasn't the best choice. But how did she get there? It was because she had no other way out. And I'm like, what else can we still do to get Konsi out of this? I left Konsi, listened to another guy's story. So I had a bunch of stories of people. I'm like, I would tell them, I have nothing to offer you. But maybe I can talk to you. Maybe we can create opportunities for you.
Brainstorm together.
We brainstormed together. And it's based on that, when I came back, we continued brainstorming with Jan and other people. How do we contribute? Even if it's little, how do we get people involved? How do we get the less fortunate to be more, basically create opportunities for them?
The best thing you can do is create as many opportunities as you can. Give people the options. Because if they don't have the options, then there's no point. They can have all the drive in the world. But if they don't have those options there for them to take and choose from, then it all goes to waste.
Exactly. Well, so way back, we putting up an idea. It's something that's still an idea on paper, but we want to work on it with support. We're having something we're calling Gifts for Uganda or Gifts from Uganda.
Now, before he dives into this, I kind of want to dive into just how powerful it was trying to walk him through. This guy, we sat down, the first time we sat down, I still lived in my apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And this was June of 2018, around there. We sat down on my balcony and talked literally until the sun went down. I mean, it was dark out by the time he left. And between all the stories that you guys have heard in the beginning of this about war-torn Gulu and everything, and him wanting to change the culture there and everything, to my biggest thing, and it may come as a surprise to the listeners, but Robinson, for whatever reason, when we first started talking, believed that he didn't have a whole lot to offer, which
occurrence.
Which blows my mind. And I told him, he was like, "What do you mean you want me to record a podcast episode?" I was like, "Brother,
there's a lot to
you
talk
have
about.
so much to talk about." But I told every single guest that we've had on that have been the best guests
are the ones
that believe that they have absolutely nothing to offer the listeners.
Untrue.
And I'm sure at this point now, the people that are listening are 44 minutes deep into this and absolutely baffled at his story.
Yeah.
And so sitting on that balcony and listening to the potential and seeing that spark and watching it grow over the past year has been probably one of the best, like the greatest honors for me personally over the last year, watching him develop and grow. And and him challenging me on things and forcing me to grow and really trying to build this up. This Gifts for Uganda is something that I think is going to be super impactful if we can get the right people on board at the right time and everything like that. So that's just my 2 cents on where we're at right now, that you're worth a lot more than you believe yourself to be, and that this idea is going to rock some worlds. So,
yeah, so what is it exactly? Or what's your brainchild?
So Gifts for Uganda is, it's not just an idea. So my experience growing up is, it has become my philosophy. Every person, every human in this world has an inherent capacity to be good, to be whatever they want to be, if they're supported from both within and without. What do I mean here? We can all be very good. We can all be, I don't know, the sky is the limit for us.
Mm-hmm.
But we always need someone or to hold us, to hold our hands. So when I went to Uganda, I met these young people who are super talented. And that's a beauty that America, the U.S. has that we don't have. In the U.S., if you can make something, if you can build something, believe me, you can make a life out of it. Somebody, you appreciate it for what it is and it's supported.
Yeah.
In Africa, the people who are super talented and they don't even realize it. So I met these guys and I met Konsi, and I met these girls who make jewelry. Well, they use our local materials. Konsi, she uses paper, recycled paper. She gets paper, cuts it, and I watched her do this. Cuts it up, uses some funny, wash it. But anyway, at the end of the day, you get beads. And it's jewelry. And she uses waste paper. She picks waste plastic or glass, kind of arranges them and comes out with this really nice, cool art piece. These guys, they get wood and carve it, give it you see the passion with which they do this.
Yeah.
But well, in Uganda, nobody appreciates this. Rather, we have a group of guys who, well, they may be businessmen, come buy this really cheaply, $1 at most. They package it, export it. At the end of the day, they become rich. Poor Konsi can send her kids to school. Poor Konsi can't even afford a meal. I'm like, okay.
Time to remove that middleman.
How do we remove this middleman? I'm like, how about if I could prepare a platform
for them
for
to showcase,
Konsi to come and be able to make, because they don't, these raw materials, well, they're not cheap. They're not exactly cheap by Ugandan standards. Like, it's hard for her to even pick. That's money she would buy food. She was buying her food, but she uses it to buy paper, waste paper. We pick them and buy them. Nobody will give them for free. But she makes it. What if I could put a platform where Konsi can come and do all manufacture, like be able to make what she's passionate about, build it. What if we could help her get whatever she makes to a market where
it's appreciated?
And we want to appreciate her not just because she's of the product she's made, but also to encourage her and tell her, well, even choosing to work and not, for example, to go sell her body, to prostitution or do something else. That's already something I appreciate. Remember, I told you, with survival in mind, you will choose the easier option.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate someone who chooses the harder option. Just see how beautiful that is, that
Yeah.
she chooses the harder option. But what if we could get her? And my beauty, what I did was I needed to listen to their stories. And I looked out for people who are motivated.
Yeah.
They want to do something for themselves, but they don't have the platform, the opportunity. So that's where Gifts for Uganda comes in. And our idea, so for all the people I met, one thing was central. They needed their kids to get an education. Because at this point, everybody appreciates and realizes it's only through an education that they're going to change not only their kids' lives, but even themselves.
Yeah.
What if whatever we can sell, if someone would buy Consi's jewelry, how about if this money would go back into directly educating Consi, not educating her with formal education, but life skills, motivate her, self-esteem, domestic violence. Some of those ladies are being beaten by their husbands, and well, they can't do anything about it. What if we can do that to better her life, to get her kids in school? So directly we create this opportunity, and we are creating a sustainable solution that doesn't just address her problems today, but looks at helping Kosi beyond today. That was the mindset. And believe me, we seem to have it all drawn clearly of how this should happen. But the challenge was, how do we make it happen?
How do you implement it?
How do we implement it? And that's where all this comes. We've been having meetings and trying to see how we can transform. We definitely, Consi and the other guys, they manufacture products. Looking at what's in the US, probably there may be quality control issues. There may be costs of production. They need a place to even come and meet together. We may need to have programs aside from that would, basically, this would be life skills programs for them.
Yeah.
Health programs. Simple, the things that are basic, but they missed. They missed. They didn't have the.
It was never there for them.
Yes, we could have that in a center for them. Let them do this work, produce these products, but we get it directly to a buyer who will not just buy the product, but also buy with the mind of supporting Consi.
The helping.
Helping Consi. And that's what Gifts for Uganda is all about.
Interesting ride, taking that idea from
but it's
a
cyclical.
glimmer
to
actually like having, do in-depth budget analysis. He's created a lot of different documents and stuff like that over the course of the last 6 months.
It's a beautiful cyclical system that you have too. It all feeds naturally into one another in the grand scheme of, the people are getting what they want, as well as, the internal satisfaction of knowing that you're helping others. And then not just the one thing that you said brought my mind to the one statement, like, you give someone a fish they can eat for a day, but you teach them how to fish, you facilitate that, then they're set for the rest of their life.
Right.
And that is that big thing.
Actually, our plan is to have at the center, when I talk of a center, this is what I'm talking about, we have a small property that we think of putting up. It's something we will live in. We hope can get us started. But we were thinking of having that center actually put classrooms there. Classrooms so that when these young girls and women and young men come, they go to work and their kids go to class.
All at the same time.
All at the same
Beautiful.
time. In one place. It's in my view, it's the best social support system. It's like shooting 6 birds with one.
So yeah, you're running on all cylinders, and you have the opportunity to put it together in a way where you don't have to have stuff outsourced in 10 different locations. You can have it in all one central one. And I think, like you said, with the mentality of them wanting to do this to get their kids into school, to get that education, to better themselves, having it all in-house like that is very comforting.
Well, and like you said in the beginning, one of the main things that you spoke about in the camps and stuff was that kids watching their parents line up and that's the only thing they saw. If they were in the same building,
Yeah,
be able
it's
to watch the parents
instilling
work,
that respect in
to
their
stimulate,
parents.
Yep,
Yeah.
the respect in the kids. So I mean, I the idea has been phenomenal. It's been amazing to watch it grow where it is. What I'll ask for anybody listening to this, if you're an apex chaser or you know anybody that would be able to offer any advice into how to move this forward or anything like that, or would be
Please
interested
reach
in
out.
trying to donate or help support Robinson in these efforts, have them reach out through the show. You can email us at jjdthoughts@gmail.com or my personal email, jalmacy1@gmail.com. I'll put that in the show description. But if anybody has resources or anything that they'd be interested in trying to help get this off the ground, I've been personally involved in developing the company for the last 8 months.
The more the merrier.
So I can definitely try to liaison some
Two
stuff.
heads are better than one, right?
Yep. Yep. I want to turn this into a hydra.
Yeah. I mean,
Someone
there's
tries to cut
there's
off
a
one
lot
head,
of
4 more jump out.
I believe me, just knowing some of the listeners and the people that listen to our show and whatnot, there's a lot of people with big hearts that would love to jump on board with something like this. Absolutely.
Oh, that's great.
So with that, I mean, we're coming up on our hour mark here. But I want to just and I always say this, it's the same quote that I give with every episode. Not that you haven't had the floor the whole time, but at this point, if there's anything that you want to tell our listeners, anything you want to tell us, or whatever, the floor is yours. Just say whatever's on your heart, whatever you want to end the episode with. This is your time.
Your time to shine.
Deliver your message.
Well, thank you. So for starters, I listen to the Apex. I listen to it. I listen to every episode.
I blushed when he told me when I
Yes.
came in here. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, he knows who I
Yes, I do.
am.
Yeah. And it's touched my life. My life was changed. Believe me. I won't tell you which episode, but I think I one time shared with you. And I think this is the way to go. Anybody listening up there, you may not realize what impact this has on someone listening. Some of them may reach out to you, others maybe do not. But I want to say that this is awesome.
Thank you. That means a
Appreciate
lot.
That, yeah.
And secondly, I've been in the US for 2 years now doing my MBA. I completed my MBA and I graduated. And in 1 week's time, I should be going back to Uganda, going back to make my contribution in changing my country, in helping other people, creating opportunities for those that did not get this opportunity that I had. Up to this point, I've realized that all of us get somewhere because somebody else supports you. And any support that anyone would ever wish or can render would be highly appreciative. More information on gifts for Uganda, you can reach out to Jan Almasi or JDD Thoughts. They should be able to
Which is now, just for clarification, people know that JJD is now Apex Communications Network. We're in the middle of rebranding that, so just reach out to
Transition.
the Apex podcast.
Yeah. We'll steer you in the right direction.
And well, I've had a good time sharing for the last an hour.
I feel like we could talk for another 3
That's
hours.
what I'm saying, man.
I'm upset that you're leaving. Maybe we'll figure out a way to do a long distance conversation
we have
with
some
you.
stuff in place that we should be able to be.
That'd be
able to
awesome.
reach
I'd
out.
love to get to know you more.
Oh, yeah.
I'm upset now that you're leaving.
Well, I'm here. And by the way, it would be really nice if some of these episodes would be listened to by kids in Africa. I mean, people in Africa need some of this motivation.
Oh,
I mean, this is supportive. Let them know.
And we can give you the links, give you the
We'll give
episode
you-
file, whatever you need to take it home with you. You can have.
spread the word.
Well, I'll be glad to. That will be truly good.
Awesome.
Nice of you. Yeah.
Well,
We
it's
hope
been-
anybody listening there that this helps, especially with such a outstanding representative of the situation and things going on over there. There, if like you said, you never had a role model to look up to, but sitting across the table from you, all I see is a role model. So it's
Yeah.
exciting.
So I mean, regardless of how humble Robinson enjoys being, and the lack of the ability. I mean, I literally don't think that he has the ability to toot his own horn. I mean, I don't think that that's even
You
a part.
gotta puff your chest out here
I
every
don't
once
think
in a
that that's
while.
even a part of his makeup. I think just innately he has the inability to brag about himself. So we're gonna take that opportunity to
Yeah, we'll
brag
brag
about
for
This
you.
entire
We'll be your
episode
hype
is gonna
man.
Be like that. Yeah. We're going to be standing. You're going to be the one standing in the mic. We're going to be the background dancers, clapping in the background, hyping everybody
We're
else
gonna hype you
in
up.
the crowd.
Thank you.
So for those of you listening, make sure that you go back and reach out if you have anything to offer for the Gifts for Uganda. If you were affected by this story, you know anybody else that would be interesting to interview along these topics, feel free to reach out. We'd love to have them on the show.
Absolutely.
If you want to support the Apex Podcast, go ahead and go to patreon.com/the Apex Podcast. If you make, $1, $3, or $5 donations, there's different tiers, different things, but mostly you'll get shout-out tweets from us, either mentioned on the live show,
I'll write you a nice letter.
or we'll write you a letter and send you a sticker in the mail. If you do want to donate and you would like some of those donation funds to go to Gifts for Uganda, all you have to do is go to patreon.com and in your notes section when you donate, type in Gifts for Uganda, and we'll make sure that we allocate those funds to be donated to Gifts to Uganda. We also have Venmo. If you want to do singular donations, you can just put Gifts for Uganda in the Venmo, and we'll make sure that those funds get to Robinson so he can use that to help support bringing
His dream.
that dream to light. You can go to follow us on Instagram @_the Apex Podcast _ @Jan_Almasy or @DocHoliday92. And that's really about it.
That was a great episode.
That was a phenomenal episode. Yeah.
Thank you for
again,
coming.
Robinson,
It was a
for
pleasure.
coming
It
on.
was very nice meeting you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
All right. And then until next time, keep chasing that Apex.